My name's Marissa, the first 31, and for the past 3 years, I've been quietly grinding nights, weekends, holidays, no breaks. My coworkers thought I was unhinged, always taking extra shifts, turning down happy hours, skipping vacations like they were optional. Rumors flew. Some whispered I was hiding from a bad breakup. Others thought I was saving up for a world tour. No one ever guessed the truth. I was saving to buy a house. Not for me, for my parents. They've lived in the same crumbling 2-bedroom for almost 3 decades. Moldy windows, paper-thin walls, floorboards that groan like a haunted house. The last time I visited, my dad spent half the visit complaining about the potholes on their street and the neighbors who played music like it was still 1995. I just sat there, nodding, sipping stale coffee, and secretly dreaming about the day I'd hand them keys to something better. A real home, quiet neighborhood, friendly neighbors, a kitchen where mom wouldn't have to dodge leaking pipes, a place they could finally relax in after a life of scraping by. I never told them. Not once. My younger brother, Jason, he never seemed to care. At 28, he was bouncing between projects. Last year, it was crypto. This year, it's a startup consulting collective, whatever that means. He lives downtown with his girlfriend in a loft. He doesn't pay for our parents' help with the rent because, he's figuring things out. Every Saturday, we do dinner at my parents'. It's tradition. Mom cooks enough food to feed a football team. Dad cracks open the wine he shouldn't be buying on his budget. Jason shows up with big news every week. I'm pitching an AI marketing app, he announced one evening while pouring hot sauce over his steak like a man possessed. It's going to disrupt the whole industry. My parents lit up like he'd just cured cancer. I smiled politely and waited for a pause. I got promoted last week, I said when Jason finally took a breath. Senior audit manager now. Comes with a bonus and some stock options. That's nice, honey, Mom said, eyes drifting back to Jason. Will the app use customer behavior tracking? That sounds brilliant. That was the moment it stopped stinging. I'd been invisible for years. Jason was the visionary, the dreamer, the one with potential. I was the reliable one, the spreadsheet whisperer. The one who paid for Dad's dental work, covered the new water heater when theirs exploded, and funded Jason's smoothie bar experiment that lasted less than 1 summer. Still, I kept saving. Every raise, every tax return, every dollar I didn't spend on avocado toast or overpriced gym memberships went into the house fund. My apartment was a shoebox. I ate frozen dumplings like it was a food group. But I finally made it. Enough for a down payment. I called a friend of mine, Lena, who's a realtor. We met for coffee and I told her exactly what I needed. Not for me, I said, sliding her a list. For my folks. Safe area. Close to clinics, groceries, nothing flashy, no noisy neighbors, no traffic-heavy streets. That's a unicorn request, she said, half laughing, but she jotted it all down. Let me work my magic. So life went on, I worked, I saved. I endured more Saturday dinners where Jason explained how he was disrupting e-commerce, while Mom nodded like he was delivering a TED Talk. But in my head, I was already picturing my parents' faces when they saw the house. And then one dinner, the mood shifted. Jason came in waving a binder. Sophie and I have a real plan this time. We're starting a brand strategy firm, branding, PR, influencer outreach. All of it. Wow, Dad said, pulling out his reading glasses. How much would something like that cost to get off the ground? Jason didn't flinch. About $180,000. And just like that, all eyes turned to me. I froze mid-chew. What? Well, Mom started carefully. You've been doing so well. All those promotions. Maybe you could help? I swallowed hard. You want me to give Jason $180 K? He rolled his eyes. It's called investing, Marissa. You'd be part of something. My hand clenched under the table. Like the taco truck? The VR travel agency? Or the time you tried selling essential oils on Twitch? He slammed his fork down. Why do you always have to be so negative? You think you're better than everyone because you have a job and no life? Mom gasped. Jason, no! Let him talk, I said, voice flat. Because I have helped. I funded 3 of his failures. I paid for your dental bills. I kept this family afloat during COVID. But now, I finally have something for me, and I'm not giving it up so Jason can crash another dream into a wall. Silence. Jason stormed off. 15 minutes later, he returned, face flushed. Didn't speak. Didn't look at me. Just stared at his plate like it was going to bite him. I left early that night. Drove home shaking. Angry. Guilty. Heart pounding. Was I being selfish? I stared at my apartment ceiling until 2 a.m., replaying everything. But I knew the truth. Giving him that money wouldn't help him. It would only erase everything I'd worked for. This house wasn't just a gift. It was proof that I mattered, that I could make something real. Weeks passed. Lena sent me listings, each one closer to the dream. Then finally she found it. Single story, 3 beds, big windows, no motorcycles, retirees on both sides. Grocery store 4 blocks down. She handed me her tablet, and I felt it. There it was. The sink Mom would love, the living room where Dad could nap in the sun. The street was so quiet it practically whispered. "It's perfect," I said. We made the offer that night, and just like that I became a homeowner. They had no idea, but they would. In 2 weeks, at the housewarming, I'd tell them, in front of friends, with champagne, with a giant bow on the porch and everything, except things don't always go as planned, and I should have known better. I kept the house a secret for another 2 weeks. Every spare moment was spent inside it, scrubbing walls, replacing hardware, ordering furniture that would feel familiar to my parents. I picked out curtains that matched the ones in their current living room. I bought Mom's favorite shade of lavender for the guest bathroom. I even found a vintage bookshelf like the one Dad lost in a move years ago. The entire place was a love letter they hadn't read yet. My friends were thrilled for me. My coworkers threw me a mini celebration in the office. Everyone I knew, except for my family, was buzzing with excitement. I didn't care about the attention. What I cared about was the moment I'd watch my parents walk through the front door and realize this was theirs. A gift. No strings. Just love. I sent out the housewarming invitations by email and text, along with a batch of goofy voice messages I recorded from the new kitchen. I tagged friends on social media, posted teaser pics of the blank walls, and asked for paint color suggestions. Everyone played along. Everyone responded, except Jason and my parents. No RSVP, no emoji, not even a thumbs up. I told myself they were still processing our last dinner. They needed time. Maybe they'd just show up on the day. Maybe that would be the real surprise. 3 days before the party, I got a knock on my apartment door. I opened it, and there stood Jason, arms crossed, jaw set, like he'd come to collect a debt. Without waiting for an invite, he walked in and started pacing like he owned the place. "We need to talk," he said. I stayed quiet, waiting for whatever was coming. "That house you bought," he continued, "sell it." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, voice clipped. "Sell it. Give me the money. You don't even need a house. You live alone. You've got no one to share it with. Meanwhile, I have a real plan, a real vision, and Mom and Dad are on board." I laughed, one short, stunned laugh. "So let me get this straight. I work 3 years, save every penny, give up vacations, and now I'm supposed to just cash it in so you can play Shark Tank with Sophie?" His eyes narrowed. "You think you're better than me because you saved money and bought a house? Big deal. All you have is a mortgage and a sad life. I'm building something." I felt heat rise to my face, but I kept my voice steady. "You're not building anything, Jason. You're jumping from fantasy to fantasy and burning bridges as you go. You want to build something? Do it with your own money. Go to the bank, find investors, get a loan like the rest of the world." His jaw clenched. "I thought family was supposed to help each other." "I thought so too," I said, "until I realized that helping you just means enabling you." For a moment, he looked like he might throw something. Then he exhaled, slow and sharp. "You'll regret this. When my business takes off, don't come running to me." And just like that, he stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the hallway light. 2 days later, Mom called. I debated whether to answer. I shouldn't have, but I did. Her voice was cold. "Your brother told me what you said. I can't believe you would speak to him like that." I sat down slowly. "Mom, he came into my apartment and demanded I sell my house. He needs this, Marissa. He has a dream. So do I. And mine doesn't require draining someone else's savings account." Her tone hardened. "You've always been selfish, but this is beyond." I didn't even get a chance to respond before she hung up. That one stung. Not because it was the first time she said something like that, but because I still hoped one day she wouldn't. The morning of the party came fast. I woke up with a mix of excitement and dread buzzing in my chest. I set everything up, candles lit, snacks out, music low, lights perfect. I had even made a slideshow of the house's before and after progress. I kept looking out the window, hoping for a car one recognized. By 6, the doorbell started ringing. Friends arrived with wine and balloons. Colleagues showed up with heartfelt cards. My old roommate brought cupcakes from my favorite bakery. Everyone smiled, laughed, complimented the space. I welcomed them all. But part of me was still watching the door. By 8, the house was full. Everyone who mattered, everyone who chose me was there. I picked up my glass, clinked it gently, and cleared my throat. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "I know I told you this party was to celebrate my new home, but that's only half the story." The room got quiet. 3 years ago, I started saving not for me, but for my parents. I wanted to give them the kind of home they never had. A place without broken pipes or peeling walls. A space where they could finally breathe. I paused, scanning the room for their faces. But they weren't there. But somewhere along the way, I realized something. I was still chasing approval I was never going to get. Still trying to buy love from people who only looked at me when I had something to offer. I took a breath. So I made a choice. This house? It's mine now. I'm keeping it. And I'm not apologizing. The room stayed quiet for a heartbeat. Then applause broke out. Real, honest clapping. I smiled, a little embarrassed, but also deeply proud. That night, I danced in my kitchen with my college friends. I drank wine on the porch with Lena, who'd helped me make the dream real. I looked around and saw joy, warmth, connection, and not one trace of guilt. Just after midnight, when the last guest left, I turned off the lights and stood in the quiet. The air smelled like candle wax and pine wood. My feet ached. My heart didn't. I'd never felt more at peace. That's when my phone buzzed. Messages from my parents. We need to talk. Call us. We heard about the party. We'll accept the house. I laughed out loud. Not out of amusement, but disbelief. Accept it, as if it were still being offered. As if they hadn't torched the bridge and now expected me to rebuild it. I didn't answer. I didn't even type out a response. I just placed the phone on the counter, turned it face down, and went to bed in my own room. My room. In my house. Bought with my money. Built with my effort. Filled with people who loved me for me, not what I could give them. The next morning, I woke up with sunlight streaming across the hardwood floors. I made coffee in silence and sipped it by the window. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything, until another knock came at the door. I didn't need to check the peephole. I already knew who it was. I opened the door to see both my parents standing there, each with a suitcase in one hand and a forced smile plastered across their faces. My dad had a large cardboard box tucked under his arm, and my mom's perfume hit me before she said a single word. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, like nothing had happened. "Aren't you going to let us in?" My dad shifted his box and added, "We figured it was time." The housewarming seemed like a good moment to make the move official. For a second, I just stood there, stunned. They weren't here to apologize. They weren't here to talk. They were here to move in, as if everything that had been said and done didn't matter, as if the house was already theirs. I stepped into the doorway, blocking their view of the living room. "You're moving in?" I asked, slowly. "Well, yes," my mom replied, brushing imaginary lint from her blouse. "After what we heard at the party, we figured you were finally doing the right thing." I looked at my dad, waiting for him to correct her. He didn't. "You said the house was for us, Marissa," he added. "You told everyone." I let out a sharp breath, more laugh than exhale. "That was before you told me I was selfish. Before you said you were disgusted with me. Before you chose Jason again." My mom's smile faltered, just slightly. "We were emotional," she said quickly. "You hurt your brother. He's fragile right now. You could have handled things with more compassion." "You're unbelievable," I whispered, not to her, not even to myself, just out loud, like I needed to hear it. "You don't get to insult me, dismiss everything I've done, and then show up with suitcases like I owe you this. Like this is yours." My dad frowned. "We thought it was a misunderstanding. We figured once you cooled down, you'd realize how important this is for Jason. He's still trying to get his business off the ground. And I'm not here to fund that anymore," I said, more firmly this time. "This house is mine. Mine. I bought it, I cleaned it, I painted it. I filled it with memories I hoped we'd make together, but clearly, I was the only one who believed in that." My mom's voice sharpened. "You told people this was our house. What will they think now, Marissa?" "They'll think I changed my mind," I said, which I did, because people who truly love you don't use your sacrifices as stepping stones for someone else's dreams. My dad stepped forward, still holding the box like it weighed nothing. "We're your parents. You owe us, Marissa. After everything we've done for you." I narrowed my eyes. "What exactly have you done for me? Besides dismissing me, ignoring my accomplishments, and enabling Jason every time he failed?" He flinched, but said nothing. My mom crossed her arms. "You're making a mistake. This bitterness, it's not healthy." "No," I replied. "What's not healthy is being raised to believe I'll only ever be enough when I'm giving something away." She sighed loudly, as if I were a stubborn child refusing to share a toy. "Fine, if that's how you want to play it." She turned on her heel and started back toward the car. My dad hesitated, then followed. I closed the door before they could say anything else, locked it, stood there with my hand still on the doorknob, heart pounding. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stood there, letting the silence wash over me like a reset. I thought I'd feel guilty. I didn't. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. What I felt was something I hadn't allowed myself in years. Relief. Over the next few days, I blocked their numbers. I muted Jason's posts. I cleared out my inbox of guilt-laced messages from extended family members who'd somehow already been fed their version of the story. She bought a house and decided she's too good for us now. She's punishing her own brother for having ambition. She's just bitter and alone. It was almost impressive how fast they rewrote the narrative. But I didn't argue, I didn't explain. I let the silence speak for me. Let them stew in it. I focused on what was mine. I hung artwork. I installed shelves. I planted tulips along the walkway because my mom once said tulips made her feel calm, and now they made me feel powerful. I joined the neighborhood book club. I started walking every morning before work and met neighbors with dogs named Peanut and Max and Tater. I found pockets of joy in the small things: my coffee mug collection, new kitchen towels, the way my bedroom window caught the morning light. Life was good, simple, mine, until Lena texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, just saw something weird. Is Jason starting a pet food business?" I blinked at the screen. A pet food business? I pulled up his Instagram, and there it was. A shiny new page with curated posts, brand colors, a mission statement, and a video of Jason standing in front of what looked like a rented studio kitchen. Introducing Pitura, the caption read, "The future of artisan, organic pet cuisine, made with love and integrity." I scrolled down. Buried in the comments, I saw it. "So proud of you, son. We always knew you had it in you, Mom." Then another comment, from a name I didn't recognize but recognized anyway, my father's middle name as a username, backed by family, built with passion. I didn't even have to ask. I already knew. They'd taken out a loan, maybe even put up their house as collateral, all for Jason. Again, I stared at my phone, torn between anger and disbelief. They couldn't help but gamble everything on him, even if it meant risking what little stability they had left. They'd do it 100 times over, and still look me in the eye and call it love. I thought about reaching out, saying something, warning them, but I stopped myself. I wasn't their keeper. I wasn't their safety net. I had been for too long, and where had that gotten me? I was done being the backup plan, the silent provider, the invisible daughter who kept everything running behind the scenes. Instead, I grabbed my keys and walked out into the sunlight. The neighborhood was waking up, kids riding bikes, someone mowing their lawn, the air thick with the smell of cut grass in early spring. I walked to the local bakery and bought a cinnamon roll the size of my head, sat at the corner bench and watched the world go by. My phone stayed in my pocket the whole time. No checking, no scrolling, no waiting for the next shoe to drop. When I finally got back home, I looked at the front door and smiled. The wreath I'd hung last weekend was crooked. I fixed it, then stepped inside and locked the door behind me, not out of fear, but finally for peace. A week after seeing Jason's new business post, I heard from my cousin Donnie. We hadn't spoken in months, but she was always the one relative who saw through the noise. She texted a screenshot of a crowdfunding page. "Jason and Sophie's dream deserves support. Help bring gourmet pet nutrition to the world," followed by a familiar list of contributors. My parents' names were at the top, listed as Platinum Donors, $50,000. I stared at the number like it would shrink if I blinked long enough. Danny added, "Did you know about this?" I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what I could say. That would make any of it make sense. What do you tell someone when your family decides your hard work means nothing, the moment your brother has another shiny plan? That your sacrifices can be rewritten in real time if it means preserving their favorites' delusions? Later that night, I sat in my living room, lights dimmed, jazz playing low in the background, trying to quiet the noise in my head. I wasn't sad, not in the way I used to be. I wasn't hurt either. The wound had already closed. It just left a scar that occasionally itched when triggered. But I couldn't shake this low hum of clarity that kept repeating the same message. They'll never change. I had thought, foolishly, that giving them the house would rewrite our history, that it would earn something I never had, growing up: their full attention, their pride, their loyalty. But now I saw it for what it was. They weren't looking for a daughter. They were looking for a benefactor. And I had finally stopped paying. The next day at work, I was in back-to-back meetings when I saw another text from Danny. He's going viral on TikTok. I didn't even need to ask who. Later that evening, curiosity won out. I opened the link she sent and watched Jason pour canned pumpkin and brown rice into a mixing bowl while narrating with the confidence of a Michelin chef. "We believe your pets deserve meals crafted with the same care and quality you'd want for your own family," he said, while Sophie filmed him from a ring light in their kitchen. It was cringe-worthy in a way only people completely disconnected from reality could pull off. The comment section was filled with heart emojis and well-wishers. I scrolled until one user asked, "How did you fund this?" His reply stopped me. We were lucky to have family who believed in us. I didn't get angry. I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at the screen, slowly nodding. Of course, he'd spin the story into a tale of inspiration. He'd make himself the underdog, rising with the help of unwavering love and support, ignoring the fact that someone else had been the scaffolding he'd stood on for years. That's how it always worked in our family. Rewrite the facts, gloss over the inconvenient parts, keep the fantasy alive. 2 days later, I got a message from Lena. You'll never guess who just called me. My stomach tightened. I already had a pretty good idea. Your mom, she confirmed, asking how much the house is worth and if you'd be open to gifting it back to the family. She said she believes you're just going through a phase. I laughed before I could stop myself. It wasn't even funny. It was absurd. She actually said that? I asked. Word for word, Lena replied. I didn't know what to say, so I told her I'd pass it along, but honestly, I figured you'd want to know. I thanked her, heart pounding. Not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of it all. They weren't done trying. They thought they could still manipulate their way into the life I had built without them. Still thought I could be guilted back into being useful. That night, I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to send, but to say what I knew I'd never get to say face to face. I wrote to my parents, explaining that the house wasn't the point. It never was. The point was that I had spent years trying to prove my love through effort, through sacrifice, through giving until there was barely anything left. And every time they showed me where their loyalty lay, I told them that Jason would always be their star, no matter how many times he tripped over his own ego. That I finally understood I was never going to be enough not for them. But I was finally enough for me. I folded the letter, tucked it into the back of a book on my shelf, and let it be. Time passed. I kept moving forward. I upgraded my backyard, planted a few more trees, started a monthly dinner rotation with new friends from the neighborhood, people who saw me, not what I could provide. I got a promotion at work that came with less stress and more freedom. For the first time, I could breathe without feeling like I had to earn every inhale. And then one afternoon, Lena called again. You're not going to like this, she said. Your parents reached out to another realtor? They're selling their house. I blinked. What? Why? I don't know the full story, but the rumor is they're in deep. Like second mortgage, personal loan, maxed out credit card deep. I didn't even need the details to know how it happened. Jason's business probably ate up more cash than they expected. Maybe it never turned a profit. Maybe it tanked completely. Or maybe they just needed more to keep the illusion alive. For a moment, I sat still, unsure of what I was supposed to feel. Sad? Smug? Vindicated? But all I felt was detached. Like someone who'd already watched the movie and knew how it ended. I thanked Lena for the heads up and went about my day. That night, I walked through my house with a cup of tea, letting the silence settle into every corner. I didn't turn on music. I didn't scroll my phone. I just existed in the space I had earned. Every wall, every piece of furniture, every detail was something I had chosen for myself. There was peace in that. There was pride too. Then the email came. It was from my dad. Subject line, "We need help." The body of the message was short. "Marissa, we're in trouble. Jason's business didn't work out, and we've overextended. We might lose the house. We didn't know where else to turn. No apology, no acknowledgement of how we got here. Just another call for rescue." I stared at the screen, 100 memories flooding in, bills I'd paid, tears I'd hidden, sacrifices I'd made while they praised someone else. And now they were reaching out, not because they saw me, but because they needed something again. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was painted in soft oranges and fading blues. It was a beautiful evening. I thought about what it would cost to step back into that role, what it would take to pull them out again. And then I thought about what I'd be giving up in return, my peace, my boundaries, my freedom. And suddenly the decision wasn't hard. I didn't answer the email, not right away. I didn't delete it either. I just left it there, unread in the inbox, like a dusty box on a high shelf I wasn't ready to open. For 3 days, I went about my life as usual. Morning walks, work meetings, grocery runs, dinner with neighbors. No one knew there was a message sitting in my inbox waiting for a reply. No one could tell anything was different. But every night before bed, I'd open my laptop and stare at the subject line, wondering if I should write something, anything. A sentence, a question, a boundary. But each time I closed the lid without typing a word, because deep down I already knew the truth. There was nothing left to say that would change what they believed or how they saw me. And I wasn't looking to be rescued from their silence anymore. I had already rescued myself. By the 4th day, A second email arrived, this time from my mother. "We're truly sorry," it read. "We should have listened. We shouldn't have pressured you. We were just so desperate to see Jason succeed. He promised us this time would be different. We thought we were helping him become something great. And now we're losing everything." It was signed Love, Mom, like we were still close, like the word itself could cover the gap between their choices and mine. I read it twice. I didn't feel anger, not anymore. Just something heavier and quieter. Grief, maybe. Not for what they were going through, but for the version of me that used to bend herself into knots trying to be enough for them. That version of me would have jumped to their rescue. She would have dipped into her savings without hesitation. She would have justified it as doing what a good daughter does. But she no longer lived here. I'd buried her the day I moved into this house. Later that evening, Lena called again. "I hate to keep being the bearer of family updates," she said cautiously, "but they listed the house. It's official now. They're downsizing into a one-bedroom rental near the freeway. It's not great, but it's what they can afford." I thanked her quietly. I could tell she was waiting for a reaction, maybe some flash of vindication or relief. But all I could say was, I hope they find peace there. Because I did. I truly, honestly did. I wasn't rooting for their downfall. I just wasn't going to stop my own life to prevent it anymore. Lena hesitated before ending the call. "I know this might sound weird," she added, "but I'm proud of you. It takes a lot not to go back, especially when it's family." I smiled at that. Not because I needed the validation, but because she was right. Choosing not to go back was harder than staying stuck. Every day I didn't respond. Every time I held my ground, I felt like I was finally learning how to put myself first without guilt attached to the decision. That weekend, I repainted the guest bedroom. It had been soft yellow before, the color I'd picked when I thought my parents might stay there on weekends. I changed it to a pale blue gray, something calming and neutral. A room for future friends, maybe visiting cousins, or a partner someday. Not for people who only saw the space as a fallback plan. I moved the antique mirror they once gifted me to the hallway, not because I cherished it, but because it looked good in the light there. I didn't throw anything out. I just rearranged until everything in the house felt like mine again, even the memories. The next message didn't come by email. It came by mail. A handwritten letter from Jason. His handwriting was still uneven, like he rushed through school just fast enough to pass, but never learned to slow down. The envelope had no return address. Just my name, perfectly centered, like a challenge. I opened it slowly, half expecting more blame, more justifications, more empty apologies dressed in charm, but it wasn't that. The letter was short. "I don't blame you. Not really. You did what was right for you. I was angry because I knew I messed up again, and you were the mirror that showed me. You were always the one holding everything together, and I pretended like that didn't matter. I don't expect anything from you. Just wanted to say I'm sorry. I hope you're okay." It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. But it was the first time I'd seen even a flicker of ownership from him. And for a moment, I didn't know how to feel. I placed the letter in the same drawer where I'd hidden my unsent note to my parents. Two versions of closure I never asked for, but needed all the same. I didn't write him back. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I'd already made peace with the silence. That peace wasn't conditional. It wasn't performative. It was earned through years of learning where to draw the line and mean it. 3 weeks passed without another message. The house felt lighter somehow, like the emotional tension had finally burned off and all that remained was space room to live, to breathe, to invite in the future. I started seeing someone, a kind architect who lived down the street. His name was Eli. We met at a community gardening event I almost skipped. He noticed the way I arranged the seedlings in perfect rows, said it reminded him of drafting blueprints. We talked for an hour without realizing it. Our first date was coffee, our second was a movie night at his place. And by the third, I didn't feel like I had to explain the silence I came from. He never asked for details I didn't want to share. He just listened when I offered them. One night, as we sat on my porch watching the sun disappear behind the rooftops, he asked, "Do you think they'll ever understand?" I thought about it for a second. Maybe not. But that's not really the point anymore. He nodded, not pushing. That's what I liked most about him. He never tried to fix things. He just let them exist. I looked at him and realized I'd spent most of my life trying to earn what was never going to be freely given. And now, here was someone who offered kindness without asking for anything in return. I didn't know where it would go, but I knew it started from a place of peace, and that was enough. One afternoon, I saw a new email notification pop up from my mother's address. I hovered over it, heart steady, not scared, not sad, just still. The subject line read, "We're sorry." I clicked it open. The message was long this time, a mix of reflection and regret, saying they never meant to choose favorites, that they didn't realize how much they had asked of me, how deeply they had failed to see me. It wasn't perfect. It didn't undo the years. But it was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever seen from them. At the end, she wrote, "We understand if you never want to speak to us again, but we want you to know we're proud of you. We always were. We just didn't know how to show it." I closed the email and sat there for a long time. Not crying, not angry, just breathing. I didn't reply that day. I didn't even decide if I ever would. But I knew this. I didn't need their apology to move on. I already had. And if they meant it, really meant it, they'd respect the silence too. The email sat in my inbox for weeks. I never deleted it, never marked it unread again. I let it live there like a framed photograph you don't hang but also don't throw away. A quiet reminder of where you've been. Some nights I'd reread parts of it, wondering if the words came from a place of guilt or truth, or maybe both. And I realized it didn't matter anymore. Not in the way it used to. I wasn't waiting for reconciliation. I wasn't measuring their sentences for sincerity. I had simply stopped living in that part of the story. My life had moved forward. It was no longer orbiting around what they did or didn't give me. The seasons started to shift. The tulips I planted in the spring wilted, giving way to lavender and rosemary. My neighborhood filled with the smell of grills and sunscreen and evening laughter drifting over fences. I got used to seeing Eli on the porch, feet propped up, sketching on a pad while I read beside him. We didn't talk about the past often, not because it was taboo, but because there was so much more to talk about than pain. Sometimes he'd ask questions, soft ones, never pushing, and I answered them in pieces when I was ready, like laying out puzzle parts on a table, one corner at a time. One Saturday, as we planted a fig tree in the backyard, he looked up and asked, "Do you ever think you'll let them visit?" I stood there, hands deep in the soil, thinking about how to answer. "Maybe," I said after a pause, "but not until I'm sure they're coming for me, not for what they think they can still take." He nodded, wiped his hands on his jeans, and passed me the hose. We didn't need to say anything else. That was the beauty of this new chapter. It didn't require explanation to be real. A month later, a letter arrived. Not an email this time. A real letter, handwritten, addressed with my full name in my mother's careful script. Inside was a photo of their new place, a small one-bedroom in a dated complex near the edge of the city. The note inside was brief. "We're settling in. It's not what we're used to, but it's ours. We think about you every day. Your father misses your stories. I miss your laugh. No expectations, just love." It was the first time in my entire life that they had reached out without asking for anything. No strings, no hints, just presence. Just proof that maybe they were learning what love meant when it wasn't transactional. Still, I didn't respond. Not out of spite. But, because my silence wasn't a punishment, it was a boundary. One that had taken me years to learn how to build. A pause where I could decide on my own terms, whether I wanted to open a new door or just appreciate the fact that they'd finally stopped trying to knock it down. In the meantime, life filled in the spaces they used to occupy. I hosted small dinners, started painting again, learned how to bake bread that didn't resemble bricks. Some of my coworkers became close friends. I helped a neighbor recover from knee surgery, and in return, she gave me cuttings from her garden and stories from her youth. I wasn't building a replacement family. I was just building a life where I didn't feel lesser for not being chosen first, and that was enough. Eli asked me to move in with him that fall. We'd talked about it for a while, danced around it in those casual, half-serious ways couples do when they're still figuring out how to merge lives without losing themselves. But when he really asked me, he didn't do it with pressure. He didn't frame it as convenience. He said, "I want to build something with you. Not just share space, but create a home where both of us get to be whole." I said yes without hesitation. Not because I needed him to complete me, but because I didn't. I was already whole. And that's why it felt right. We didn't sell my house. That surprised some people, but I couldn't let it go. Not because I was clinging to the past, but because it wasn't a symbol of struggle anymore. It was a milestone, a chapter marker, proof that I had done something real for myself when no one else believed I could. So we kept it, rented it out to a young couple with a baby on the way. I left a note on the kitchen counter for them. "This house was built on hard lessons and fresh starts. May it bring you both." And then I handed over the keys with a smile and walked away, knowing the foundation was still solid even if someone else would build new memories inside it. One crisp November morning, as I sipped coffee on Eli's balcony, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. Just one line. "We saw your name in the alumni magazine. You made partner. We're proud of you." No extra commentary. No emotional bait. Just pride. A quiet one. I stared at it for a while, letting the weight of it sink in. It had taken them years to say it out loud. and it had taken me even longer to stop needing it. I didn't reply, but I smiled. Not in spite, just peace. The holidays came and went. We stayed local, skipped the big family gatherings, decorated modestly, made new traditions, lazy brunches, midnight walks, handwritten cards instead of gifts. There was no need to fill the season with noise. There was enough warmth between us to go around. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the ache of missing something. I felt whole, anchored, safe. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I'd gone through with the original plan. If I'd handed my parents the keys that day, let the cameras roll while they posed in front of the porch with wide smiles and quiet expectations. Would they have sold the house when Jason needed a bailout? Would they have made it seem like it had always been his future to lead? Would I have disappeared again this time in square footage and silence? Probably. But I don't regret any of it. Not the plan, not the pause, not the choice to keep the house for myself. Because what I gained was so much bigger than a home. I gained the ability to say no without flinching. I gained the power to define love in my own terms, not theirs. I learned that loyalty without boundaries isn't love. It's a slow erosion of self, and I stopped giving people the tools to chisel away at my worth. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone I fought hard to become. Someone steady, thoughtful, and finally free. The woman who once begged for approval has turned into someone who gives herself permission. Permission to rest, to celebrate, to walk away, to build new roots in healthier soil. The last thing I do before bed every night is close my window and check that the latch is secure. Not because I'm afraid of who's outside, but because I'm protecting what's inside, my peace, my growth, my life. Everything I had once tried to buy for others, I now nurture for myself. And in that quiet stillness, I know something for sure. This is what healing looks like. Not fireworks or dramatic endings, just soft mornings, clear boundaries, and a home that finally feels like mine. Story 2, I've always been the second choice, the afterthought in my family. My name is Lucy. I'm 29 years old. And for as long as I can remember, my sister Jamie has been the golden child. She is 4 years older than me, and, in my parents' opinion, more intelligent, attractive, and gifted than I am. Lucy, you need to recognize that you're not as gifted as your sister. My mom would say, not even attempting to cushion the impact. We don't want you to have false notions about yourself. Growing up with that type of encouragement was terrible, but I learned to live with it. I had to when Jamie from high school, my parents pulled up all the stops. They paid for her to attend a reputable college and even rented her an apartment because she didn't want to live in a dorm with those people. 3 years later, when it was my turn, I received a bombshell from my parents. "We don't have money for your college," Dad replied plainly over supper. "You'll need to solve a problem on your own." Jamie didn't even glance up as she sat there, messaging on the new phone they got her. So I did just that. For a year, I lived with my parents and worked at a nearby cafe to save as much money as possible. After that, I took out a student loan and spent 4 years in college. I balanced job and school, returning home weary to parents who hardly noticed what I had done. I got an entry-level position with a marketing company after I graduated. It was a beginning, but it wasn't glamorous. My debt was overwhelming me. I'm accumulating money for a car to replace my failing one while paying my modest apartment's rent with student loans. I was, however, making things work. My parents then asked me to join them for supper. Dad added in a tone that was unusually serious. "We need to talk about something important." A knot started to grow in my gut. "What's the matter?" Mom reached for your father's hand and explained that his work hours had been reduced. "We're struggling to make ends meet. We hoped you might provide us with short-term financial support till circumstances improve." I paused. "I'm not sure whether I can. Forget it. I'm already overburdened with loan installments." Dad interrupted me. His expression hardened. "Dinner is canceled, I suppose. I don't feel hungry anymore." They both got up, leaving me sitting at the table alone myself, with guilt weighing me down. I requested more shifts from my supervisor after experiencing stomach aches and restless sleeps for a few days. I then gave my folks a call. "Every month I can send you $700. That's the most I can do at the moment," I told them. "For now, that will enough." Mom's voice warmed up immediately as she answered. "Additionally, you'll be able to assist us more after you receive the promotion you're aiming for." "No, thank you. We don't value it." For 2 years, I just promised to give them more as soon as I could. I did just that. While Jamie, who by then had a decent career, continued to get money from our parents, I sent them $700 a month. When she received a promotion at work, they even covered her vacation expenses. There was no celebratory meal or phone call to offer congratulations when I eventually received my own promotion. My mother just sent me a message. That's fantastic. Sweetheart, we were considering raising your monthly payment to $1,000. Right now, I wanted to refuse. I wanted to yell that it was unfair, but I was aware of the consequences. The guilt trips, the quiet treatment, and the passive-aggressive remarks. I thus concurred. Mom remarked, "That's my good girl." And I detested the way those statements simultaneously made me feel exploited and delighted. I toiled for years, worked, and saved money until I eventually completed my final student loan payment. I was relieved of that load 7 years after I graduated. I felt as though I could finally breathe and felt lighter than I had in years. I celebrated that evening by driving to my parents' place and purchasing a bottle of pricey wine. Jamie was there as well when I entered. Like she owned the room, she was lounging on the couch. "What's the event?" She eyed the bottle and inquired. "Today I paid off my last school loan." I spoke without being able to control my pride. "Officially, I have no debt." Jamie rolled her eyes and snorted. "Are you celebrating that?" "Lucy, my God, that is really dull." She grabbed the bottle out of my hands before I could reply, then turned to our parents and grinned broadly. "Let's honor something that truly counts," she declared. "I got to know this incredible man. I'm taking him to see you next week, and he's loaded." In a way that never happened to me, my parents' features brightened. They made no mention of Jamie stealing my drink or interfering with my moment. They forgot why I had gone over in the first place, and simply started asking her questions about this man. I picked at a platter of crackers and cheese for an hour before sneaking out the door. That night, nobody even realized I was gone. I pondered whether things would ever change as I lay in bed and looked up at the ceiling. Even after the money was repaid, I still felt bound by my parents' demands, expectations, and the part I had always played in our family. Following the alcohol incident, I distanced myself from my relatives. My parents' monthly reminder calls were the last kind of communication we had. "This month, don't forget to send the $1,000. Lucy." No inquiries concerning my happiness, career, or life. Only the cash. Jamie didn't contact me, and I didn't call her either. The gap between us seemed like a chasm, even though we had never been close. So, one Tuesday afternoon when I was at work, I was taken aback when her name appeared on my phone. "Hi there?" I gave a cautious response. "Lucy." At last. "Listen," Jamie remarked without making any effort to be polite, "my birthday is in 2 weeks. I'm throwing a party at Bellini's to celebrate my 33rd birthday. One of the priciest eateries in town was Bellini's." She went on, "Of course, I'm sending you 3 gift options. Select one and bring it to me. If not, you'll most likely give me something worthless, just as you did last year." I gave her a homemade photo album last year that had images from her early years. She had hardly given it a look. Additionally, avoid being late. 7 o'clock is the reservation time. She hung up after saying that. My phone rang with her message a few minutes later. 3 item linkages. A cashmere sweater costs $550. A set of earrings costs $650. And a luxury purse costs $850. I bought the sweater with expedited shipping after clicking on the link for the cheapest option. It was Jamie's birthday night. I wrapped her gift in silver paper with a matching ribbon, dressed carefully in a blue dress I had been putting off for a special occasion, and went to Bellini's. A dozen individuals were already seated at a huge circular table, which the hostess showed me. I was seated at the far edge, sandwiched between my cousin Todd and my aunt's friend Marge, whom I hardly knew, while my parents and Jamie took up the middle seats. When the waiter arrived with champagne, my father was the first to stand and raise his glass to Jamie since it was time for toasts. In honor of our lovely, intelligent daughter's 33rd birthday. His voice was full of emotion as he spoke. "I am very proud of the lady you have become, as is your mother. Words cannot express how much we adore you." With tears in her eyes, my mother stepped behind him and took out an envelope. After giving it to Jamie, she remarked, "This is just a small token of our love." Jamie let out a sharp gasp as he opened it. $25,000. "You shouldn't have, parents. My champagne almost suffocated me." $25,000. They had grumbled about the $300 gift card they gave me for my 25th birthday, the most they had ever given me. Mom stated, "We wanted to help with your down payment. We are aware of your desire for a home of your own." Jamie got up and lifted her glass, clearly moved. "I want to express my gratitude to my wonderful parents for always making me feel like the world's most treasured daughter. Your generosity and affection have kept me from ever wanting anything." When she stated that, she gave me a direct look. A little smile tugged at her mouth. My parents gave a hearty cheer. There was an unsettling silence around the table. My uncle cleared his throat. Todd, my cousin, shuffled uneasily next to me. Everyone was aware of our family's partiality. Not that it was a secret. Well, Jamie remarked brightly, let's continue. And do you want to say something, Carol? However, something inside of me exploded. Perhaps it was the $25,000 check, or the champagne, or the arrogant look of Jamie. I got up before Aunt Carol could say anything, whatever it was. Actually, I said, sounding more composed than I actually was. I think it's time for me to talk. Jamie's smile wavered. Carol and Lucy came next. It appears that you have forgotten that there are 2 girls in this household. I ignored her and went on. Not only the one you loved the most. There was silence across the table. My dad cleared his throat. This isn't the time, Lucy. Dad, for what? For the truth. Even though my heart was racing, I was unable to stop. Right now. All I've ever wanted is for you and your mother to love me as much as you adore Jamie. But now I know that will never be the case. With a dismissive tone, my mother responded, "You're overreacting. You always make everything about oneself, isn't that right?" I looked straight at them. What is my apartment's address? My parents exchanged puzzled glances with one another. You're not sure, are you? Do you know where I live, Aunt Carol? My aunt gave a nod. Apartment 3B in the Parkview Apartments on Maple Street. I went back to my folks. Which business do I work for? They turned crimson in the face. My dad stumbled. The marketing firm Reynolds & Associates is the location. Quietly, my abs worked. You see, I remarked, surveying the table. Even the most fundamental details regarding my existence are unknown to my own parents. Neither have they ever been to my residence or inquired about my work. Nevertheless, they continue to defraud me of $1,000 each month. Lucy, put an end to this now. My mom gave a hiss. You're making us seem foolish. Jamie got to his feet, anger twisted at her face. This supper is for my birthday. If you are unable to behave, leave. I paid them both no attention. Surprisingly, my voice came from today as I declared, I'm done. I will no longer be sending you money. I'm also done acting like we're a family. That is not possible. My mom let out a cry. That money is what we're banking on. Then I advise you to seek assistance from your most beloved daughter. I put Jamie's present on the table and answered, cheers to your birthday, sis. After that, I left Belittling, leaving my family spluttering in outrage and a table full of stunned expressions. I switched off my phone as soon as I arrived at my car. I had to sit for 5 minutes before I could drive because my hands were trembling so much. Was that what I had just done? Is it true that I confronted my family in front of everyone? It was a blur on the way home. My thoughts kept returning to the startled looks on my parents' faces, Jamie's gaping mouth, and the awkward quiet around the table. I felt guilty in part. A bigger part of me felt something strange, even though I had made a disturbance at my sister's birthday supper. Relief. For the first time in years, I took off my heels, poured myself a glass of wine, and fell onto my sofa when I arrived home. When I thought about money, I didn't get the knot in my gut that usually happens. I've had enough of extending my finances to pay my parents $1,000 a month, eliminate the sense that I was never accomplishing enough. I didn't switch my phone back on before going to bed. Even though I knew what was ahead, I woke up the following morning feeling strangely light. I brewed coffee. I inhaled deeply before turning on my phone. Notifications burst out of it instantly. Mom missed 15 calls, Dad missed 7, Jamie missed 3, and there were 28 text messages. With each one, I felt my gut tighten as I browsed through them. Call me immediately, young woman, Mom. Your mother is really unhappy, Dad. You must express regret. Jamie, I appreciate you spoiling my bee today. You self-centered jerk. We're depending on that money, Mom. Dad, this is unfair to us, Lucy. This is how you pay us back for everything we've done for you? That last one made me chuckle bitterly. All that they had done for me, such as claiming that I was inferior to my sister when I was a little child, forcing me to work and take out loans while they took care of Jamie's expenses. However, I then saw further texts from family members who attended the meal, and, Carol, Lucy, I'm proud of you. Cousin Todd, it had to be spoken. Even though last night was heated, you defended yourself. Uncle Bob at last. Favoritism has always been a feature of your parents. Well done for pointing that out. Their encouragement made me cry. I didn't think anyone would support me. With shaking fingertips, I launched my banking app after taking another deep breath. I located the monthly transfer to my mother's account by navigating to the section on regular payments. After a few periods of hovering over the cancel button, I firmly clicked it. There was a confirmation message. Cancel the recurring payment. The 2 weeks that followed were unusually quiet. To avoid seeing their calls or texts, I banned Jamie's and my parents' phones. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was stagnating financially while I went to work, watched movies, and spent time with friends. Though I hadn't been able to afford a trip since college, I began putting the additional $1 into a savings account in the hopes of going somewhere. My mother, Lucy, then sent me an email precisely 2 weeks after the event with the birthday meal. This month, we've observed that the money hasn't arrived. We need you to correct this right now, even though I'm sure it was just an oversight on your side. I'm dependent on this gift, as is your father. Kindly rethink your rash choice and carry on with the payments. Mom. How are you, Mel? No recognition of the events that transpired inside the eatery. Just a request for cash. I didn't answer. Another email showed up a week later. This has lasted long enough, Lucy. This is what you owe us, your parents, at least. We've had to cut back on a number of needless costs since the money hasn't come. Give us a call right now. Once more, Mom. I didn't answer, but this time I took a different approach. I sent Jamie the email along with a brief note. Perhaps you ought to lend them a hand for once. She answered in a matter of minutes. I'm not in charge of it. All you're doing is attempting to avoid your responsibilities. They are also your parents. Funny, I typed back, you've been their only kid for as long as they've existed. All of a sudden, I'm also their daughter now that money is involved. To that, she didn't respond. Another week went by. One evening, my doorbell rang while I was preparing supper. I peered through the crowds, not expecting anybody. In the hallway stood my parents. My heart began to race. They must have seen the lights were on, but I thought about acting like I wasn't home. I inhaled deeply before partially releasing the door while leaving the chain in place. Why are you here? Startled by how steady my voice sounded, I inquired. They seemed worn out. My mother's normally immaculately combed hair was pulled back in an untidy ponytail, and my father's shirt was crumpled. Please, Lucy. With a gentler tone than normal, my mother spoke. Could we enter? We must speak. After a moment of hesitation, I unhooked the chain and took a step back. They slowly made their way in, as though they were entering uncharted ground, which I knew they were. They had never been to my residence before, until now. You found my address, but how? They were standing clumsily in my little living room when I inquired. We asked Dad. Carol. Embarrassed, my father confessed. They had, of course. What are you looking for? Despite my best efforts to seem neutral, I could hear the sharpness in my voice. My mom let out a sigh. We're sorry, Lucy. What you stated at the restaurant has been on our minds, and you were correct. We haven't treated you fairly. We should have been more engaged in your life, but we haven't been. I gazed at them with suspicion, and, my father emphasized, we want to put things right. You are missed. Do you miss my money? Flatly, I replied. That is untrue. I could see the spark in my mother's eyes even though she objected. We truly apologize for our treatment of you. You're sorry I finally defended myself and interrupted you. I corrected her. You're sorry your ATM quit operating all of a sudden. Please, Lucy. I raised my hand before my father began. No, I'd rather not hear it. I've tried to get your affection and acceptance my entire life, and I'm finished. I've given up on attempting to outdo Jamie. I've had enough of feeling inadequate, and I've finished sending you the money I've worked so hard to earn. While you disregard my other attributes, they exchanged glances, obviously unprepared for this degree of opposition. We're allowing you to reflect. At last, my mom remarked, we'll wait for your call. Soon after, my parents departed, saying they would give me space, but that they expected to hear from me soon. Leaning against the door, I shut it behind them. My heart is racing. There was a part of me that hoped they were serious and genuinely regretted their treatment of me. The bigger, smarter component, however, was aware of this. I had trouble sleeping that night. I rolled over and over, repeating their exchange and doubting myself. Had I been too severe? Was it right of me to give them another chance? Then, though, I recalled every birthday, all of the accomplishments they had disregarded, and the instances in which they had negatively compared me to Jamie had been forgotten, and I recalled that they had no idea where I worked or resided. I gave Aunt Carol a call the next morning. Hello, dear, she gave a kind response. How are you doing? Were you aware that my parents would be visiting my apartment? They inquired. She let out a sigh. They wanted your address when they phoned. I debated whether or not to give it to them, but I reasoned that perhaps they were at last prepared to make apologies. Was I mistaken? I said I'm not sure. Although they expressed regret, it seemed like their apology was more for the money stopping than for anything else. They've always been your parents. She hesitated, trying to find the correct phrase. Difficult. They've never been adept at owning up to their mistakes. However, this may be a beginning. I wasn't persuaded. Perhaps. How will you respond? She inquired. I'm not sure yet, but I'm definitely not going to send them money ever again. Good for you and Lucy, she stated firmly. I want you to know that you have my admiration. You've put in a lot of effort and achieved a lot on your own. My eyes welled up with tears. Why were such words never able to be spoken to me by my own parents? My parents didn't get in touch with me for a week. 2 weeks after that, I kept thinking they were going to knock on my door again or discover a new means to get in touch with me. However, nothing was present. I felt relieved at first, but then strangely let down. Had they surrendered so readily? I then got a letter in the mail precisely 1 month following their visit. Jamie sent it. Of all individuals, I nearly tossed it away without opening it. However, my curiosity overcame me. One sheet of paper with her exact handwriting was inside. Without your help, Lucy's parents are having financial difficulties. They've had to make many sacrifices. Mom is considering returning to work for the first time in 20 years, and Dad is searching for a second job. I can't afford to support them right now, but they requested me to. I had to move into a smaller apartment when my partner and I split up. I am aware that I have always been the favored and that we have never been close. I didn't specifically ask for it, but I also didn't turn it down. It wasn't until now that I realized how much they depended on you financially. They gave me so much and demanded so much from you, which is unfair. I'm not requesting that you resume providing the funds. I wanted to let you know that they are having a lot of difficulties. Call them, perhaps. Jamie. I gazed incredulously at the letter. Jamie, admitting the injustice. Jamie is not requesting that I resume the payments. I read the letter 3 times since it was so uncharacteristic, searching for the manipulation, the guilt trip, or the catch. However, it didn't appear to be one. For the first time in my life, I was thinking about my family while enjoying a glass of wine on my balcony that evening as the sun sank. I had plenty of money. My student loans have been settled. In addition to saving money every month, I had begun researching automobiles to replace my outdated sedan. Since I was no longer providing for my parents, all of this was made feasible. Was I content though? Indeed. I discovered quite surprisingly. I loved my career, had supportive friends, and was free to make my own decisions without feeling pressured or guilty all the time. I was content without my family's approval. Against my better judgment, I received a call from an unknown number the next day. I responded to it. Dad is here. Lucy, don't hang up, please. I've been thinking a lot, and so has your mother. I remained silent and waited. We were mistaken, he went on, his voice cracking a little. We have consistently acted incorrectly toward you. You were taken for granted by us. We offered too little and demanded too much. We also apologize. I'm very sorry. I had never heard him apologize so sincerely before. But Dad, I've been duped before. Let me finish, I know. He cut me off. We don't anticipate receiving another payment from you. I'm not phoning for that reason. We wish we had the opportunity to be better parents to you because we miss you. I closed my eyes, caught between mistrust and hope. I'm not sure whether I can believe that. I get it, he murmured softly. We haven't gained your confidence, but we'd want to try if you're open to it. Perhaps we could get together for coffee at some point, simply to chat. I gave it some serious thinking. Maybe, I responded at last, but not just yet. I require further time. Let's wait, he pledged. No matter how long it takes. After we hung up, I took some time to think about what we had discussed. Had they truly comprehended what they'd done? Or was this just another ploy to manipulate? I was not certain, and I was not yet prepared to find out. The months that followed were life-changing. Using the additional funds I was conserving, I was finally able to purchase the new automobile and move into a nicer apartment. I celebrated my second promotion at work with my buddies, who were more like family to me than my own family had ever been. I maintained contact with Aunt Carol and a few other family members, but I avoided Jamie and my parents. I wanted that room to discover who I was, without having to worry about their opinions and expectations. I eventually consented to have coffee with my parents 6 months after the altercation at the restaurant. At first it was uncomfortable and stressful, but it was also unique. They inquired about my new residence, my work, and my life. They paid attention to what I had to say. There were no subtle jabs about how I should be performing better or comparisons to Jamie. We're proud of you, Lucy, my father added as we were heading out. We ought to have informed you of it long ago. I started crying when I heard those remarks since they were so straightforward but so meaningful. I didn't express forgiveness. I hadn't arrived yet. For the first time, though, I considered the possibility that I might be able to. I made a new life for myself in the year that followed. I established new acquaintances, resumed dating, and even used the money I had saved to travel alone to Europe. I discovered that I was stronger than I had previously thought. I discovered that I could be content without the approval of my family. My connection with Jamie and my parents is still complex, We are gradually restoring confidence. Carefully, one step at a time. There are moments when I fear that we will never be genuinely close. I've also come to terms with that prospect. Story 3. My name is Nellie, and up until lately, I believed I had my life under control. Over the past 10 years, I have risen through the ranks of Wilson and Clark Trading to become the leader of a department. I need the stability, and even though the hours are tough, the income is decent. Mark, my ex-husband, and I had been on good terms since our divorce 3 years ago. For the sake of our kid Jake, we remained cordial even though we both understood we had drifted apart. Since Mark works as a freelance graphic designer and has a flexible schedule, he usually picks Jake up from school, and I drop by his house after work to drop him off at home. Jake appears to be well adjusted despite commuting between 2 homes. And it works for us. Can we see Grandma and Grandpa this weekend, Mommy? One Friday night as we were driving home, Jake inquired. Playing with Emily and Zach was something I missed. I groaned as I looked at a red light on my phone's calendar. We hadn't had a family meal in about a month. Yes, honey. Tomorrow morning, I'll give my grandmother a call. In actuality, I had been delaying these family meals. Vanessa, my younger sister, had always been the best kid, and she had grown incredibly irritable about her ideal family life ever since she married Robert and had her 2 children. As if I had failed, she would always find a way to remind everyone that I was divorced whenever we were together. You'll see what Robert bought me for our anniversary when you wait. Showing off her new bracelet, she would say. She would then pretend to be sympathetic. Having to handle everything by yourself must be really difficult. Nellie, I was not bothered by it. I was aware that Vanessa had always admired my professional achievements. She married Robert, a mid-level insurance salesman, after dropping out of college. They had financial difficulties, particularly with 2 children. In the meanwhile, Jake and I had established a nice existence. Vanessa's hypocrisy was what really got to me. She never thought twice about calling me when she needed money, even if she was condescending. Our insurance will pay for Emily's braces. Are you able to assist us? Until next month when Robert receives his commission? Nellie, we need to repair the gearbox since our automobile broke down. Are you able to lend us $3,000? We'll reimburse you by the summer. I never asked, and she never returned a dime. That was simpler. Not much better were my parents. When his firm shrunk 3 years ago, Dad lost his job. Additionally, Mom's arthritis had already forced her to resign from teaching. They were crying when they phoned me, fearing that they might lose their home. What began as a one-time bailout became a monthly commitment, and Dad never found another employment at his age. I've been sending them $1,500 a month for the last 3 years to pay their bills, including utilities. My budget was tight, but I didn't mind because, after all, they were my parents. I contacted my mother on Saturday morning to inform her that we would be joining her for supper the following day. Oh, that's fantastic. Mom sounded really happy. Vanessa will also be present with her family. Pot roast is what I'm cooking. Throughout the weekend, Jake was thrilled. As we drove to my parents' little suburban house on Sunday afternoon, Zach exclaimed, "I can't wait to show Zach my new Minecraft world." Vanessa's vehicle was in the driveway when we got there. As I picked up the apple pie I had brought from the bakery, Jake sprinted ahead. Unlike my mother and sister, I never had the time to bake from scratch. Jake and his cousins vanished upstairs right away. The sound of their laughing reverberated down the steps. While setting out the silverware, I spotted Mom in the kitchen and gave her a brief embrace. In the living area, I heard Robert and Vanessa conversing with my father. They had lively, expressive voices. "You can be sure of it, Dad. We've done the research," Robert said. "In our community, this food truck idea is likely to be quite popular. No one else is preparing real Filipino fusion food. We will be in charge of ourselves. Finally, financial independence," Vanessa said. To stop myself from giggling, I bit my lip. Robert was incapable of even cooking, and none of them had ever managed a business. I kept my feelings to myself and completed arranging the table, even though he burnt the mac and cheese last Christmas. We all gathered around the table as Mom summoned us all to dinner. Jake was chuckling over something on Zach's iPad while seated between his 3 cousins. During supper, the kids put that away. Vanessa remarked, then grinned broadly as she turned to face the grown-ups. "We thus have important news to share. It's coming," I pondered. "I'm beginning my own business with Robert, a food truck that specializes on fusion Filipino dishes. We discovered the ideal truck for sale, and Robert's grandma left him all these wonderful recipes. My folks cheered me on and made the right sounds. Dad gave Robert a shoulder clap. "That's fantastic, my dear. You've always been so creative," Mom added. After smiling, Vanessa cleared her throat. "We only require a little amount of initial funding, around $150,000. There was silence in the room. Halfway to my mouth, my fork hesitated. Dad and Mom looked at each other. "We would be delighted to assist you, dear." Dad spoke slowly. "However, at this time, we simply do not have that kind of money." I bought myself some time to think by clearing my throat and taking a sip of water. Everyone was looking at me with anticipation, as if I were going to declare that I would be contributing to Vanessa's absurd food truck plan. I apologized firmly, but I also don't have that kind of money. The smile on Vanessa's face wavered. "What are you saying? I am aware that the divorce settlement gave you money. Mark and you were saving money for a home. Jake now has that money in his college fund." I said, "But it wasn't totally accurate. It was, in part, but I had also put some money aside for my own retirement. Ultimately, nobody else was concerned about my future." Vanessa pressed, "Well, you earn a lot of money at your job. You could borrow money. The bank would accept you based on your income and credit score." What I was hearing was unbelievable. "For your business idea, do you want me to incur debt?" "It's more than just a concept." Robert leaped in. "We have everything planned out. As soon as we turn a profit, we will reimburse you." "When would that be?" "That's right." Trying to speak in a neutral tone, I asked, "Have your operating expenses been determined? Your point of break even? Have you ever operated a food service company before?" Vanessa got red in the face. "Just because you work in a fancy corporate job doesn't mean you have to be patronizing. Not everyone aspires to live their entire life as a wage slave." I said, "I'm not being patronizing. I'm posing standard inquiries that any investor would make. Look, before you jump in, I believe you should consult a business advisor. Food trucks and restaurants have a very high failure rate." "You're just jealous," Vanessa shouted, slamming her hand on the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. The kids stopped eating and stared wide-eyed at the adults. "You've always been jealous that I have a real family, and you're divorced. Now, you can't stand the idea that Robert and I might be successful and independent while you're stuck in your corporate cubicle taking orders from someone else." She stood up so abruptly, her chair nearly toppled backward. "Come on, Robert. Kids, get your things. We're leaving." Robert looked uncomfortable, but stood up dutifully. Emily and Zach, clearly confused, scrambled from their chairs. Jake looked at me with wide, worried eyes. "Vanessa, don't be dramatic," Dad said. "Sit down and finish your dinner. I'm not sitting at the same table with someone who wants to see me fail." Vanessa snapped, grabbing her purse. "Let's go now." And just like that, they stormed out the front door, slamming behind them. An awkward silence fell over the table. My parents exchanged glances. I waited for them to say something, to acknowledge how unreasonable Vanessa was being. Instead, Dad sighed heavily. "Nellie, your sister has been dreaming about this business for months," he said. "You know how much it means to her." What I was hearing was unbelievable. "Dad, they have no business plan, no experience, and they're asking for a huge sum of money. Would you invest in that?" "It's not about investing," Mom said quietly. "It's about supporting family." "I support my family plenty," I said, feeling a flush of anger. "I've been sending you $1,500 every month for 3 years. I've loaned Vanessa money countless times that she never repays. How much more support am I supposed to give?" "That's different. Mom said we needed help, and you could afford it, and now I'm saying I can't afford to give Vanessa $150,000. Why is that so hard to accept?" Dad shook his head. "Your sister is trying to build something for her family. You could at least consider helping her." I stood up, suddenly feeling suffocated. "I'm not changing my mind about this. The essay needs to be realistic, and you two need to quit indulging her." I called to Jake, who unwillingly said farewell to his grandparents. The journey home was silent, with Jake looking out the window. Our Aunt Vanessa and Uncle Robert upset at us. He eventually asked, "They're just disappointed," I remarked, hoping to find a youngster appropriate explanation. Sometimes folks get frustrated when things don't go their way. I believed that would be the end of it. Vanessa would cool down, realize she was being ridiculous, and we'd all go on. I was mistaken. The call started the next day. First from Vanessa, then Robert, then both of them. I responded the first time, attempting to be sensible. After giving it some thinking, I still said no. "I'm not taking out a loan for your business," I responded firmly. "You're simply being self-centered." Vanessa fired back. "Since you would no longer be the successful one, you don't want us to succeed. That is absurd. I wish you luck. However, I don't believe this is the best course of action. Don't dictate to me how I should live. Simply claim that you are too avaricious to assist your own sister." I stopped taking their calls after that. Even bad were the SMS texts. "I've always made you jealous. We don't have fancy degrees, therefore you look down on us. Selfish jerk. We'll succeed, and you'll regret this." I thought about asking my parents to step in, but it was obvious whose side they supported. I blocked Vanessa's phone and made an effort to concentrate on my job. Jake as well. It was 2 months later. I used work deadlines as an excuse to avoid the monthly family meals. I felt bad for keeping Jake away from his relatives, since he constantly inquiring about them. However, I was unable to confront Vanessa again. My mom's monthly calls, which had grown increasingly colder, were the only way I could communicate with my parents. Just making sure that tomorrow is when you plan to send the funds. Without inquiring how Jake or I were doing, she would say, "Yes, mother. As usual, it will be present." Excellent. That's all. The cost of your father's prescription medication increased once more. No, you are missed. Or, how is Jake's academic performance? Just a professional certification of the money exchange. Jake once looked up solemnly from his studies one evening. How about we see Grandma and Grandpa one again, Mom? Did they make a mistake? I took a seat beside him and tried to think of a way to convey adult issues to a 9-year-old. We're only taking a brief vacation from family dinners, honey. Adults occasionally require separation from one another. That response appeared to satisfy Jake, but it made me pause. We usually celebrated Thanksgiving at my parents' place, and this year was no exception. Perhaps it was time to introduce ourselves, even if they hadn't called to welcome us this year. I asked Jake if he was excited to meet Grandma and Grandpa tomorrow on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Yes. His expression brightened. Will Grandma prepare her special stuffing, in your opinion? I paused. Honey, I'm not sure if we'll be invited this year. His grin dimmed. Why wouldn't we receive an invitation? Every year on Thanksgiving, we travel there. The disappointment in his eyes was too much for me to handle. What do you know? You're correct. In any case, we'll go. They will be delighted to see us, I'm sure. To be honest, I wasn't entirely certain. However, I didn't want adult arguments to keep Jake from participating in family customs. I got up early the following morning to make my famous sweet potato casserole. When it came out of the oven, Jake assisted me in wrapping it in foil. We arrived at my folks' place about midday after driving there as usual. There were many automobiles in the driveway. I recognized a handful that belonged to my aunts and uncles, as well as Vanessa's SUV. As I carefully balanced the casserole dish, Jake sprinted to the door. He bounced with delight as he rang the doorbell. The door was opened by Mom. When she noticed me standing behind Jake, her smile vanished. "Melly," she said, sounding surprised and not particularly pleased. "We weren't expecting you. It's Thanksgiving." I said simply, "We always come for Thanksgiving." She hesitated, peering back into the home. I could hear conversations and laughing coming from the living room. "Well, come in then," she eventually responded, standing aside. "Jake, your cousins are in the basement playing video games." Jake instantly rushed out for the basement stairs. I carried my casserole with me as I followed my mother inside. The air was filled with the traditional sense of stuffing and turkey, but the mood was tense. Vanessa was assisting with the table setting as I entered the dining room. Her face suddenly stiffened as she looked up. "Why is she in this place?" She glared at her mother and demanded. I took a step forward. Sweet potato casserole was what I brought. I offered the food as a sacrifice for peace. To my surprise, Vanessa stormed over, grabbed the dish out of my grasp, and proceeded directly to the kitchen trash bin, where she threw the entire casserole. She spat, "You don't need anything from us. This is not a place for you. Leave now, Vanessa." Mom didn't try to stop her from gasping. "What's happening?" Dad came, bewildered, in the doorway. Uninvited, Nellie showed up. Vanessa replied that after ignoring everyone for months, she would not assist us. She believes she may enter here as if nothing had occurred. I believed I had begun. "You were mistaken." Vanessa interrupted me. "You are not allowed to select when to join this family. When you declined to stand behind us, you made your decision." She bounded by me and headed for the basement. I went with her. She was worried about what she would say to the kids. As we arrived in the basement, Emily, Zach, and Jake were all seated on the floor, all three of them engrossed in the video game. "Emily, come on over here immediately, Zach," Vanessa ordered. The kids glanced up, perplexed. Taking both of her kids by the arms, she dragged them away from Jake. She said, "You are not to play with him," gesturing to Jake. "He is likely to become just like his mother, who is a nasty person who doesn't care about family." Jake wrinkled his face. He yelled out to me, "Mom." His eyes were filled with tears. I froze in disbelief. In front of a child, how could Vanessa say anything like that? My father showed up on the stairs before I could reply. "Nellie," he stated firmly, "I think it would be best if you and Jake left." I looked at him in shock. "You can't be serious, Dad. Jake recently heard terrible stuff from Vanessa. His age is 9 years. This is our home. And, to be honest, you've created enough trouble," Dad remarked. "If only you had complied with our request to assist your sister, there wouldn't be any of this." I glanced around for support, but my mother avoided my eyes and stood quietly at the top of the steps. There was no sign of my relatives or uncles, presumably still in the living room, oblivious to the noise. "All right," my voice trembled with hurt and rage as I spoke. "Jake, hurry up, we're leaving." I guided him up the steps by holding his hand. Large tears were streaming down his face as he sobbed in silence. As we went by, I stopped, "Mom. It's unbelievable that you're allowing this to occur." "Silently," I said. "Your own grandchild." At last, she looked directly into my eyes. "Nellie, you caused this yourself. Family helps family." Without saying another word in the car, we drove off. Jake was distraught. I didn't know where to go, so I started the car. It was too gloomy to imagine returning home on Thanksgiving to find the house vacant. Then I thought of something. "Hello, would you mind visiting Grandma and Grandpa Miller's home alternatively? They would probably be delighted to see us." I told my ex-husband Mark what had transpired over the phone. "That is terrible," he remarked. "You should definitely come over. In any case, Mom usually prepares too much food." They also adore watching Jake. As we got to the Miller's residence, they gave us a sincere welcome. Mark's mother gave me a strong embrace. "Of course," she answered. "Family disputes are the worst, particularly over the holidays." I filled them in on Vanessa's business plan, the request for money, and how my parents had basically picked her over me over dinner. "I've always felt that Vanessa was given too much preference by your parents." Mark's mother spoke slowly. "I never wanted to see it, not even when we first met in college. I can no longer dispute it, but I did confess it. We managed to have a good evening in spite of everything. I felt like I was a part of a real family again for a few hours. One that genuinely cared about me as a person and not just a source of income." While Jake cried while playing board games with his father and grandpa, I made up my mind as Jake and I drove home that evening. For the first time in years, I canceled the $1,500 regular payment to my parents when we returned to our apartment by logging into my banking app. Without thinking about straining my budget to assist everyone else, I went to sleep. There was no communication from my family for 2 weeks. No texts, no calls. Not even from my mom, who had insisted on knowing when her paycheck would be arriving each month. To make up for the Thanksgiving catastrophe, I pushed myself into my job and concentrated on making Jake's forthcoming Christmas vacation spectacular. My mother's number called on my phone one evening. Curiosity overcame me and I nearly didn't respond. "Nellie, it's me." She spoke in a strained tone. "The bank must be making a mistake. Your transfer for the month was not received. Mel, how are you? I apologize for Thanksgiving. Let's go right to the point." Something hardened within of me. No error exists. I gave a fair response. I called it off. On the other end, there was silence. "What do you mean by canceling it then? That is not possible. That money is what we need to pay our expenses." "I did, and I can. I don't believe I owe you anything after what transpired over Thanksgiving. It was only a miscommunication, Nellie. Things went out of control because your sister was unhappy. A miscommunication. What I was hearing was unbelievable. On Thanksgiving, you and your father ejected your grandchild. Jake is evil, so Vanessa instructed her kids not to play with him. And you all did nothing to prevent it. We were angry. When people are agitated, they say things they don't mean. Well, what I stated was true. I've sent you all of my money." Mom's voice abruptly altered. "You have no authority to treat us in this way. I've been giving you back $1,500 a month for the past 3 years, after everything we've done for you, including raising you and seeing you through college. That amounts to $54,000. I believe we are square, Mom. This has nothing to do with scorekeeping. We are your parents. You have a duty to assist us. Oddly enough, when you choose Vanessa over Jake and me, I didn't feel like your daughter. Despite being Jake's grandparents, you allowed Vanessa to mistreat him. We sided with your sister on the company loan, so you're simply being spiteful. Nellie is being petty. You can think whatever you want. I'm finished." After I hung up, calls began to come in, from Vanessa, Dad, and even aunts and uncles. I didn't talk too much. When the calls didn't get through, I wouldn't answer. They began to appear at my place of employment. My assistant stuck her head in while I was in a meeting. "I apologize for disturbing you, but your parents are in the reception area. They are adamant about seeing you." In the reception area, I excused myself from the meeting. Mom and Dad appeared desperate and unkempt. "This is not suitable." Silently, I said, "I work." "You refuse to take our calls?" Dad said. "What were our options?" "Everything I have to say has been spoken. Before I have to call security, kindly go." Mom started crying, a performance that has impacted me innumerable times previously. "How are you able to be so mean? We might lose our home. I have been on your side for 3 years. Now I have to consider my own family. Look for an alternative. All right, Dad responded, his cheeks flushed with rage. However, don't assume that you can just scurry back to us in an emergency. It nearly made me chuckle. How many times have I been the one scurrying to you for assistance? The opposite has always been true. I gave the security guard a signal. Escort them out, please. As they were escorted out, Mom returned the call. All along, your sister was correct about you. I got a text from Vanessa that evening. You self-centered, vindictive bastard. You might cause Mom and Dad to lose their home. I hope all is well with you, high and powerful corporate drone, miss. After blocking her number, I proceeded to ban my parents and other family members on all platforms. It felt unexpectedly freeing. I saw my cousin Rachel at the supermarket store a month later. When she saw me, she appeared uneasy. Nellie, how are you? With caution, she inquired. I'm doing okay, regards. How are you doing? She paused. Look, I was requested to speak with you by your mother. To pay for their mortgage, they had to take out a loan. They claim that you left them because you're envious of Vanessa's wonderful marriage and angry about your divorce. I gave a head shake. Are they telling everyone that? Basically. Additionally, Vanessa has been attempting to borrow funds for this food truck venture from everyone. She asked for a loan from my spouse. Is it not unbelievable? Like we've had $150,000 laying around. Did she tell you that my jealousy is the reason I didn't give her the money? Rachel gave a snort. That kind of thing. But no one is buying it. Vanessa has always been about money, as we all recall. Do you recall how she attempted to convince me that the open bar at my wedding was wasteful? It was nice to hear that not everyone in the family had turned against me, and we both chuckled. How is Jake handling everything? Rachel inquired. Although he is resilient, he misses his cousins. My ex-husband's family, with whom we celebrated Christmas, has been amazing. I'm happy. Listen, next month is Emily and Zach's birthday celebration. My children and I will be there. Jake might want to attend. I could come get him and take him home. Thus, you are not required to see Vanessa. I thought about it. You're really kind. But I don't want to involve Jake in adult disputes. Instead, let's schedule a playdate with your children. I felt lighter than I have in years when I completed my food shopping. My monthly financial burden had vanished, along with the emotional toll of attempting to win over unsatisfied individuals. Jake looked up from his schoolwork that night. Will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again, Mom? I took a seat next to him. I'm not sure, friend. Grandma, Grandpa, and Mommy need some time apart right now because they were rude to us throughout Thanksgiving. In part, but partly because adults might differ on significant issues. He compared this to the day Zach and I didn't speak for a full day after we couldn't agree on which Pokemon was the greatest. Something like that, but more gravely, I smiled. However, you will always have Dad, myself, and Grandma and Grandpa Miller, who adore you, regardless of what happens with them. He returned to his schoolwork after appearing content with that response. For my part, I was at last prioritizing my son and myself. It was time to make an investment in our future after years of serving as the family's ATM.